I also put an advanced Fourier system
on the main hallway chalkboard. Was this correct? Who did this? So without further ado, come forward, silent rogue, and receive thy prize. My colleagues and I have conferred, and there is a problem on the board right now. That took us more than 2 years to prove. Oh, you do? Sorry. Oh my God. Looks right. 20-year-old Will Hunting was sitting at home, reading a book. Then his friend Chucky arrived outside in his car. Just like he did every day, Chucky picked him up, and the two drove off together. At the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, a famous mathematics professor and Nobel Prize winner, Gerald Lambeau, was in the middle of a class. He told his students that he had recently written a difficult math problem on the hallway blackboard. Whoever solved it would have their name printed on the front page of the MIT Tech newspaper. He explained that the students who had been featured in MIT Tech in the past had gone on to become great people and had done important things in the world. Now he was hoping that one of his current students would achieve something big too. I'm hoping that one of you might prove it by the end of the semester. But Will wasn't a student at MIT. He was a janitor. While cleaning that hallway, he noticed the math problem on the board and stared at it carefully. The problem stuck in his mind after just one look. Even though he had no idea about the professor's challenge or the rewards it offered, he still went home and started trying to solve it. The next day, while cleaning the hallway, Will quietly writes his solution on the board. When the professor finds out that someone has solved the problem, he rushes over. He's shocked because the answer is completely correct, but no one knows that it was actually Will. The next day, Will is watching a baseball game with his friends. There he spots a guy who used to beat him up badly during childhood. Will doesn't say anything at the time, but later, he and his friends track down the guy's group and attack them. It's me, Will. Remember we went to kindergarten together? Will beats him up brutally. Soon the cops arrive and try to stop him, but Will even lashes out at an officer. The cops arrest him and take him. In the professor's next class, everyone is curious. Without further ado, come forward, silent rogue, and receive thy prize. To find out who it is, the professor writes a new math problem on the board, one even harder than the last. It had taken him and his colleagues 2 whole years to solve it. That took us more than 2 years to prove. Meanwhile, the court gives Will a hearing date for the next week and releases him. Will returns to MIT and begins solving the new problem on the board. But this time, the professor catches him in the act. Before the professor can ask anything, Will quickly runs off. When the professor looks at the solution, he's stunned. The problem that had taken him 2 years of intense work, Will solved it with ease. The professor now realizes Will is a genius. That night, Will lies to his friends, telling them he got fired from MIT. He doesn't tell them the full truth, that he's actually quitting the job himself, and that he's a genius in mathematics. Maybe some fear inside him was holding him back. Later, they all go to a club, where Chucky tries to impress 2 girls by saying he is a genius in studies. But then, a cocky guy shows up, someone full of pride about his knowledge. He tries to put Chucky down by asking him a bunch of tough questions. To help his friend, Will steps in and handles the situation. He answers the guy's question with an excellent response, citing the exact book reference and page number. The guy goes completely silent after hearing that. Then Will tells him, "You spent thousands of dollars in college for this information, while I got all of it for free just by reading books in the library." "Yeah, but I will have a degree." One of the girls sitting there, Skylar, is impressed by Will's knowledge, and she even asks to meet him again. When he goes outside, he sees that guy again. "I got a number." Meanwhile, the professor had found out the truth about Will and went straight to the court for his hearing. There it's revealed that Will has a past criminal record, with charges like assault and car theft. But he was smart. He always managed to get away somehow. The judge also knew that Will was an orphan who grew up in foster homes, where he wasn't treated well. Maybe that's why he turned out the way he did. But this time, Will had hit police officers, so the judge didn't show any mercy and decided to send him to jail. To get bail, he'd have to pay a fine of $50,000. Thank you. For Will, this was terrible news. But for the professor, it was a golden opportunity. The professor spoke with the judge and convinced him to release Will under his supervision. But for that, Will had to agree his 2 conditions. First, he'd have to work with the professor on math research. And second, did you see a therapist? Because only a therapist's report could help the professor get Will out on bail. And until that happened, Will would have to stay under the professor's watch. Will agreed to do the math research, but when he refused about therapy, since he had no other choice, he was forced to accept both of the professor's conditions. After that, Will solves another difficult math problem, fully convincing the professor that he hadn't used any tricks. He truly was a genius. The professor felt proud of Will. Since Will was scheduled to visit a therapist the next day, he read that therapist's book in advance and gathered all the information about him, so he could outsmart him, and that's exactly what happened. During the session, then Will exposed the therapist's personal secrets. Do you find it hard to hide the fact that you're gay? What are you talking about? What? Embarrassed and shaken, the therapist refused to treat him any further. I haven't got time to tell you, much less talk to that raving loony, an absolute lunatic he is. Then, another therapist tried to hypnotize Will, but that didn't work either. Will was too smart, and no therapist was able to handle him. You really hypnotized me, you know. I don't need therapy. That's enough, get out. The professor realized Will wasn't going to be easy to manage, so he reached out to an old friend, Sean, a psychology professor at a community college who used to be his roommate. Professor Gerald told Sean everything about Will, explaining that Will was a rare gem who didn't yet understand his own value. He wasn't just any ordinary kid. He was a genius, like India's great mathematician Srinivasa Ramanujan. Hearing this, Sean agreed to take on Will's therapy. The next day, Sean calls Will to his office. The professor already knew how smart Will was, so he warned Sean to handle things wisely. Just then, Will arrives, fully prepared to mess with his new therapist too. The professor leaves the room, and Sean begins talking to Will alone. Sean's office was filled with books. Will looks around and starts mocking the books, speaking rudely to Sean. It was all part of his plan, to provoke Sean, disturb him, and ruin another therapy session. But Sean could see through Will's game. He stays calm and doesn't react much. With no other option, Will tries to provoke him further by insulting Sean's wife. That's when Sean snaps. Will now realizes that Sean's wife is his weakness, so he insults her again. This time, Sean completely loses control. You ever disrespect my wife again, I will end you. Then Sean lets him go and Will walks away feeling victorious. But Sean is left feeling upset. Seeing this, the professor assumes Sean won't continue the sessions. But Sean doesn't give up. He tells the professor that therapy will continue from next week. That night, Will goes on a date with Skylar. He finds out that Skylar comes from a wealthy family and is studying at Harvard University. Skylar really likes Will too. Their date goes well, and the two start liking each other. During the next therapy session, Sean takes Will to a park. He says, "At first, I was really angry about your rude behavior the other day. But soon, I realized you're just a kid, one who doesn't even understand what he's saying." Sean tells him, even if you know something about love, it's based only on books. And books can tell you about something, but they can't make you feel it. Real life is far more beautiful than any book, and you don't understand that, because you've only read about life. You haven't lived it. And if you had lived life, you'd know what it feels like to be with someone you truly love. That kind of happiness, no book can ever describe it. But you wouldn't know, because you've never loved anyone that deeply. Sean's wife had cancer. She spent her last 2 months in a hospital bed holding Sean's hand. And even today, Sean still loves her deeply. That's why Will's words had made him so angry. He says, when you love someone more than your own life, and you have to watch them die a little more each day, no book can ever explain how much that hurts. Then Sean looks into Will's eyes and says, I don't see a confident, intelligent man. I see an arrogant, scared, foolish kid. You're an orphan, and I understand that pain. But how would you feel if I mocked your past by quoting from a book? No book can tell me who you are. I can only learn that by spending time with you, and you don't even realize what you said that day. And with that, Sean walks away. Will had started to feel the weight of his mistake. But even now, his ego was holding him back. The next day, Will goes to work at a construction site with Chucky. In the evening, he calls Skylar. She picks up the phone, but Will, held back by some fear in his mind, hangs up without saying a word. During the third therapy session, Will doesn't say anything. Seeing him silent, Sean also stays quiet and gives no reaction, because he knows Will is still trying to play mind games. The entire session passes in silence between the two. Sean understands that unless Will chooses to open up, he'll just have to wait. Was this some kind of staring contest between two kids from the old neighborhood? Yeah, nice. And I can't talk first. Meanwhile, Will does exceptionally well working with Professor Gerald on math research. Problems that other mathematicians hadn't solved in years. Will solves them with ease. To the professor, it all feels like a miracle. Then in the fourth session with Sean, Will finally breaks his silence. He tells Sean a joke. Sean had been waiting for this moment. He asks Will about his girlfriend, Will tells him that he's dating Skylar and that she's very different from other girls, but he doesn't talk to her much on the phone because right now she feels perfect to him, and he's afraid talking too much might ruin it. He loves Skylar, but he's scared that if she finds out he's an orphan, she might stop seeing him. But Sean tells him, no one is perfect. All of us have strengths and flaws. Then Sean starts talking about his wife. He says, my wife had this strange habit. She'd fart loudly in her sleep. One night she farted so loud it scared the dog, and she even woke herself up. She woke herself up. Then Sean adds, it's been 2 years since she passed away, and I still miss those little things about her. And I have plenty of flaws too. Maybe weird ones, but she loved them. When we love someone, we love them for both their strengths and their flaws. You're not perfect, and neither is Skylar. But if you love each other, you can be perfect for each other. Sean's words start to make an impact on Will. Then Will asks Sean why he doesn't get married again. But Sean says no. He loved his wife so much, he could never give her place to anyone else. And here Will wants to talk more, but Sean says their time is up. And for the first time ever, it was the therapist who mentioned the end of the session. Because until now, Will had always been the one winning these sessions. But this time, it was Sean who had won. Not by quoting from a psychology textbook, but by using his personal life experience. Something far more powerful than any book. After the session, Will meets Skylar. When Skylar asks him about his family, Will lies to her. He says he has 12 older brothers, and that he's the 13th and youngest one. What are they called? Maki, Ricky, Danny, Terry, Mikey, Davey, Timmy, Tommy, Joey, Robbie, Johnny, and Brett. Sag. In the next therapy session, Will asks Sean, don't you ever regret it? That you even met your wife? If you hadn't, you wouldn't have had to go through all this pain. Sean replies, not even a little. Then Will asks, how did you meet your wife? And how did you fall in love? Sean says he had gone to watch a baseball game with his friends, a game that turned out to be one of the most historic matches in baseball history. They had spent the whole night sleeping near the stadium gate just to get tickets, and they actually got them. While sitting at a bar waiting for the game to start, he saw a girl there, Nancy. Then Sean starts describing the game. It was a thrilling match, part of the World Series. The stadium was packed. The match was intense, and the entire audience was cheering wildly with excitement. Listening to the details, Will gets super excited. He says, I can't believe you got tickets and watched that match at the stadium. But Sean tells him, I didn't watch the match in the stadium. I watched it later on TV. I stayed at the bar with Nancy. But Will is shocked and says, you missed such an epic game? After waiting all night for tickets? And for a girl you didn't even know? How could you do that? I feel like you're messing with me. But Sean says, no, I'm not messing with you. The moment I saw Nancy, I fell in love. And I didn't want to lose that moment, no matter what. Because Nancy wasn't just any ordinary girl. I married her, and I spent the best 18 years of my life with her. It was after meeting Nancy that I truly understood what love means. That's why, whether it's missing that match or Nancy leaving this world, I don't regret anything at all. Hearing Sean's words, Will became completely silent. Sean's words were simple, but they carried weight. After listening to Sean, Will started getting closer to Skylar. Their bond began to grow stronger. During this time, Will introduced Skylar to his friends, but he still didn't tell her the truth, that he was an orphan. Meanwhile, several companies started offering Will job opportunities. So Professor Gerald met with Sean, asking him to quickly prepare Will's psychological report so they could plan out Will's career. But Sean said Will still needed time. I don't think he wants degrees, medals, or fame. His path is something else entirely, and if we pressure him, he'll run away forever. Even so, when the professor asks Will to attend an interview, Will sends his friend Chucky in his place, who ends up taking money from the interviewers and walking out. But now, Skylar was getting ready to move to California for her future. She asks Will to come with her so they could live together. But Will wasn't ready. He loved Skylar deeply, but he was still trapped in his own insecurities. He feared she might leave him one day for some rich guy, and that's why he couldn't bring himself to fully trust her. Hearing this, Skylar started to feel that Will was just afraid, someone who didn't want to leave his comfort zone. They got into an argument. Skylar said, I know you've been lying to me about having 12 brothers, but even so, I love you. This triggered something in Will. In anger, he confessed the truth. He said, no, I don't have any family. I'm an orphan, and the caretaker at the place I lived, he used to torture me. He'd burn his cigarettes on my body. Drunk, he'd beat me badly. And the scars from that torture, they're still on my body today. Skylar tried to calm him down. She wanted to help him, but Will was furious. He said, I don't love you, and walked away, breaking Skylar's heart. After leaving Skylar, Will's personal life became even more tangled. He was feeling upset and started getting into arguments with the professor too, because now he didn't even want to continue working on math research. Even though he was a genius, he still wasn't focused in life. Seeing his genius-level skills, Will received a job offer from the National Security Agency to work in code breaking. He talks about this in his next session with Sean. Sean knew that Will had never truly opened up to anyone. Not once had he shared the pain he carried inside. And that pain, buried deep for so long, needed to come out. Otherwise, Will would never be able to live a normal life. Sean asks him, "Is there anyone you feel close to?" Will says his friend Chucky. Sean replies, "He'd break someone's head for you, but he doesn't understand the depths of your heart." Then Will names some philosophers and writers, but Sean says, "They all died years ago." Sean then asks him, "What do you actually love doing? What do you want to do with your life?" It was a simple question, but Will was so lost in his own mind, he had no answer. Sean tells him, "You're incredibly gifted. Your talent is rare, but by not using it, and instead doing labor work, you're throwing your life away." Will had no answer to Sean's words, so he tries to distract Sean with his usual mind games, but Sean sees right through it and immediately tells him to leave the room. Then one day, while working at the construction site, Chucky finds out about Will's breakup. He tells Will, "You have the chance to make your life better. I'm not capable of doing anything great, but you are. And even with all your talent, you're wasting yourself here, working with us, slowly destroying your own life. You need to focus on yourself. And if you let your life go to waste just because of your stubborn pride, then it won't just be your loss. It'll be a loss for all of us. And if that happens, I swear I'll kill you." Chucky's words force Will to think, because at that point, Will had already decided he didn't want to work on math research anymore. That's why the professor was furious with him, and he storms into Sean's office, arguing with him. The professor was thinking that if Will didn't want to work with them, he should be failed in the therapy evaluation and sent back to jail. But Sean tries to make him understand. He explains that the trauma Will faced as a child had left deep scars on his mind. Because of that, he still fears trusting anyone or letting anyone get close to his heart. Because everyone Will ever trusted ended up hurting him. That's why I won't let you do this to him. Then Sean adds, what Will is doing. It's a defense mechanism. Before anyone else can leave him or hurt him, he pushes them away first so he won't have to feel that pain. That's why he's been alone for the past 20 years. Because he's scared to trust, scared to build real relationships. And as for his friends, they just have fun. They're the kind of guys who, without a second thought, would break someone's head if Will asked them to. That's why Will feels comfortable around them. But even they don't understand the depth of his heart. Sean believes that before Will can build a career, he needs to build a deep and meaningful relationship with someone, so he can finally live with an open heart. Just then, Will arrives. He had been standing outside the door, listening to everything. And now he knew that Sean had been standing up for him, that Sean truly understood him. When the argument between Sean and the professor escalates, Will opens the door. The professor leaves, and Sean shows Will his court case file. Inside were photos of Will, proof of the child abuse he had suffered. Will asks Sean, "Have you ever felt anything like this?" Sean replies, "Yes, I have. My father was an alcoholic. He used to come home drunk and was always looking to beat someone. So I used to provoke him, just so I could protect my mother and younger brother." Will says, "My foster father in the orphanage was the same. He would lay a belt, a stick, and a wrench on the table, and tell me to choose one." Sean says, "I'd choose the belt." But Will replies, "I chose the wrench, so he could let all his anger out." Based on all the therapy sessions, Sean had finished writing Will's final report, but Will believed he had failed the therapy, and that he was about to be sent to jail. So he asks Sean, "What did you write in the report? Attachment disorder? Fear of abandonment?" Will also tells Sean that he and Skylar had separated. Hearing that, Sean realizes Will is now completely alone and deeply broken from within. Then Sean gently says, "Listen to me carefully. None of what happened to you was your fault." Sean knew that Will trusted no one else in the world but him. That's why he was trying to make Will cry, to finally help him release all that pain buried inside for years, to help him feel lighter. Then Sean slowly moves closer, but Will gets disturbed and tries to push him away. Then suddenly, he pulls Sean into a tight hug and breaks down crying uncontrollably. Sean gives Will the kind of love a father would, something Will had never received before. And this was the first time Will had ever cried in someone's arms. And through Professor Gerald's reference, Will joins a company. In his final therapy session, he tells Sean about his new job. Sean is about to leave for vacation, so he gives Will his office number. Then Will sincerely thanks him from the heart. Sean wishes him good luck for the future. The next day is Will's birthday, and his friends gift him an old car. Will takes that car straight to Sean's house and leaves behind a note for him. In the note, Will writes, "Tell the professor I'm sorry, Atam." Will is going to meet the girl he loves. Just like Sean once skipped that legendary game to stay with Nancy, Will is now leaving the job to go meet Skylar. Because jobs can always come later. But true love, that comes only once in a lifetime. Sean is truly happy for Will, because now, Will had finally healed. Thunder, feel the thunder.